everybody, Sean from Movie Assault here, and it is time once again for another video. This time out, I wanted to do something that seems to be going around at least some of the movie community on YouTube, and that is picking your top 25 movies of the 1990s. And from what I've been informed, this was originated by Tim Talks Talkies, a channel that I didn't know anything about until just recently. I heard about this from Kenny's Movie Palace, whose channel I will link in the description below. He got the idea from Tim Talks Talkies, and I like Kenny's channel, so I'm just going to throw myself into the ring and list my favorite top 25 favorite movies from the 90s. Now, some people, I guess, are worried about coming across as, picking award-winning movies or picking movies that everybody else picks. What I did was I have a list of my top 100 movies of all time in an Excel spreadsheet because I'm that kind of a dork. And I cross-referenced that with what I listed just off the top of my head as my top 25. And there were about 55 movies in there from the 90s. So I eliminated the duplicates and then whittled those down to movies that I've seen more than once and that I own on Blu-ray or DVD. So that's how I came up with my list. I'm not the type of person that sits and watches the same movie like multiple times over and over again. Obviously, I like to rewatch movies and watch movies all the time, but I'm constantly watching new movies. So if I go back and watch a movie a second time, that means I really like it. If I watch it a third time, it's really, really worth watching in terms of what I think. And if I've seen it more than 3 or 4 times, then it's really one of my favorites. And I think I've seen every movie on here more than 3 times. So I'll start with number 25, and that is Tremors from 1990, which was directed by Ron Underwood, who I didn't realize also directed City Slickers, which I just realized that today, which is kind of crazy. And that, of course, has Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward battling the graboids in the desert. I love that movie because it's sort of a throwback to the 1950s movies that I grew up on watching when I was a kid. So I really enjoy Tremors. Number 24 is Indian Summer, which was directed by Mike Binder. And this is sort of it's a comedy drama. It's kind of schmaltzy. But I just have good memories of watching this, and I've watched it multiple times over the years. I just really enjoy it. It's got a really nostalgic feel to it. It's got a great cast, including Alan Arkin. It's Alan Arkin, Bill Paxton, Diane Lane, Matt Craven, Julie Warner, Elizabeth Perkins, Kevin Pollak, Sam Raimi's in it, Kimberly Williams, Vincent Spano, and that's about it. But yeah, it's a schmaltzy, I want to say coming of age story because it's not. It's sort of a look back kind of a movie. It's full of nostalgia. I like it. Number 23 is Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. This is the last of the original cast movies. I love the Star Trek movies featuring the original cast. Not all of them are fantastic, but this one had their series went out with a bang. It's kind of a whodunit in space. Of course, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, brain. Christopher Plummer is in it, George Takei, James Doohan, Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols. You know the cast. At number 22, I have Apollo 13, which was directed by Ron Howard. Features, of course, Bill Paxton, Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, and just a great suspenseful space movie. And I really, really enjoy that. Based on a true story, of course. Number 21. Yeah, 21. Is The Rock, directed by Michael Bay from 1996, featuring Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage, and Ed Harris. This, of course, is a fantastic action movie. I just reviewed it recently on my website. I did not do a video for that review. Really enjoy it. Just a really good performance from Connery, a dialed-in performance from Cage. Ed Harris is great, and the action sequences are top-notch. So it's just a really good action movie. Number 20 is Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg, also featuring Tom Hanks. And another great cast, including Tom Sizemore, Ed Burns, Matt Damon, Barry Pepper, Adam Goldberg, Vin Diesel, Giovanni Ribisi, and Jeremy Davies. Just a great war movie. Can't say enough good things about it. It really brings home the horrors of war, and that opening scene will forever be one of my favorite opening scenes of all time. At number 19 is Fight Club, directed by David Fincher, starring Brad Pitt and Ed Norton. Just, I'm just rambling these thoughts off the top of my head, what I think about with these movies, and this one is just sort of it's sort of a really whacked out look at what it means to be a man in this materialistic age, and what they say. The original book, which was by Chuck Palahniuk. I'm probably saying that wrong. But just sort of the frustration of the 90s. Just a really, really good movie, and really enjoy it. Number 18 is Jacob's Ladder, which was directed by Adrian Lyne. And this is kind of a twisted movie. It's been very influential on movies that have followed it, but it seems to get forgotten a lot. It's a psychological thriller, very weird, very off-putting in terms of some of the visuals, but just a really good time. I saw it in the theater, and I've watched it several times since. It was recently remade. I have not watched the remake, but I've heard it's terrible. Don't bother is my advice to you. At number 17, I've got The Exorcist 3, also known as The Exorcist 3 Legion. And this was directed by William Peter Blatty, based on a book by himself. It is considered the true sequel to The Exorcist. At least the book is. The movie was kind of hacked over by the movie studio, and so there were some things that weren't in the book that had to be sort of shoehorned into the movie. But this has a fantastic performance by George C. Scott. Brad Dourif is in it. And also Jason Miller playing Patient X, and who looks a hell of a lot like Father Damien Karras. And Ed Flanders from St. Elsewhere is in this, and also very good. There's a lot of subtle humor in it. Brad Dourif's performance, especially some of the diatribes he goes on, just fantastic. And probably, if you haven't heard, it's got the best jump scare scene of all time, at least as far as I'm concerned. At number 16, I've got Office Space, directed by Mike Judge. You've probably heard a lot about this movie. It's quoted all the time. If you've worked in an office, you know this stuff. A lot of it, even 20-some years later, still rings true. It's a super relatable movie, and great cast with Ron Livingston, Jennifer Aniston, David Herman, Jay Naidoo, Dietrich Bader, Stephen Root, Gary Cole, can't forget him. His performance is fantastic. Just an all-around great movie. Number 15 is Clerks, directed by Kevin Smith. Speaking of relatable workplace movies, if you've worked retail, you'll definitely relate to this movie, and the customers and the coworkers. I think when Kenny reviewed this, it was on his list, top 25 of the 90s. Everybody knows a Randall, everybody knows a Dante, and that's 100% true. Just a great movie. Again, great cast of then unknowns: Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, Jason Mewes, Kevin Smith, of course, and it launched Kevin Smith's career. At number 14 is Goodfellas, directed by Martin Scorsese, or Scorsese, depending on how you pronounce it. Of course, starring Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco, Paul Sorvino. Just an excellent mob movie. I always say this, and I get a lot of flack for it, but I know Godfather is considered one of the greatest movies of all time and one of the greatest mafia movies of all time. I will take Goodfellas every single time over The Godfather. I just enjoyed it more. I found it more engaging, more interesting. The performances are better. Kill me. It's my list. Whatever. But Goodfellas at number 14. At number 13 is Total Recall, which was directed by Paul Verhoeven and stars, of course, the great Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just an excellent story based on the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep from Philip K. Dick. And Sharon Stone is in it, Michael Ironside, Ronnie Cox. Just a great cast. Special effects kind of hold up. A lot of the practical effects, at least, hold up. Just a great movie, a great science fiction story, and full of action. Just love it. At number 12 is Jurassic Park, directed by Steven Spielberg. This is a movie that just when I saw it in the theater, my jaw hit the floor. So anytime I watch it, I get that sense of wonder back just because the special effects for their time were so phenomenal. They still hold up really, really well. And it's just that awe-struck feeling I get from the movie that just rings true when I watch it. The plot is it's probably not the greatest plot in the world, but just I was such a big fan of dinosaurs when I was a little kid, and finally seeing realistic looking dinosaurs on the screen that looked, moved, acted like real animals was just amazing for me. So I kind of become like a little kid when I watch that movie. At number 11 would be JFK, starring or directed by Oliver Stone and starring Kevin Costner, Sissy Spacek, Tommy Lee Jones, Gary Oldman, Kevin Bacon. Michael Rooker is overlooked in that movie, but he is actually really good in it. Jack Lemmon, Laurie Metcalf, Joe Pesci, John Candy, just a great cast. I am a huge I don't want to say aficionado because that's really kind of a stupid word for what I'm trying to express, but I'm sort of caught up in all the JFK assassination theories and conspiracy theories and stuff. I just like researching into that stuff. I don't buy into 90% of the weird stories that people tell, but it's just interesting that all this stuff happened and nobody can really get the story straight. And JFK, it's probably kind of takes some of the best and worst of these conspiracy theories and kind of scrambles them all together into what is a coherent story, but definitely is probably not what happened. But I do like the angle that the Jim Garrison trial was the only time that anybody was brought to trial for anything related to the assassination. I think that's very interesting. All right, the top 10. We've got at number 10, Unforgiven, which was directed and stars Clint Eastwood, also has Morgan Freeman. An excellent Western. I like a lot of old Westerns. I'm not a huge Western fan, but I want to get more into Westerns. I've said that several times on the channel. But this is one of my all-time favorite Westerns. It is just an excellent story. Revenge, great performances from Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman. Just unbelievably good. At number 9 is The Crow, which was directed by Alex Proyas and stars Brandon Lee. The rest of the cast, Michael Wincott, Ernie Hudson, and Bai Ling, they're more or less, you would recognize their faces, if not their names. Ernie Hudson, of course, from Ghostbusters. Rochelle Davis, who plays Sarah in the movie. I don't know if she's done anything since. I don't remember her being in anything. But this, of course, is the story of Eric Draven, who comes back to life after being brutally murdered by a gang of wackos, and he's infused with immortality. And it's based on the comic book by James O'Barr, which I've read, and just a great movie. It's action. Of course, the backstory of Brandon Lee getting killed on set kind of gave it some pathos, but I don't know. I just really, really enjoyed it. And again, I saw it in the theater and I've watched it several times since then. At number 8 is Silence of the Lambs, or The Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme. What can I say about this movie? It has the phenomenal performance from Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Jodie Foster is amazing in this movie. I believe she won the Academy Award. Scott Glenn is also really good. And of course, Ted Levine as Buffalo Bill. Can't forget him. Unforgettable performance. Just a great movie. I remember seeing it in the theater. I had to travel to another town over because the theater in my town was having some sort of dispute with the distributor, so they couldn't get it. So I had to travel for like an hour to see this movie, and it was well worth the drive, and I'd see it. I'd drive that far again to see it. At number 7 is Ed Wood, directed by Tim Burton. And this is, of course, the story of Edward D. Wood Jr., considered one of the worst, if not the worst, director in Hollywood. I will have a review of one of his films later on the channel this week. But he was a real guy, and this is a real story, even though the details may be fictionalized a little bit, but most of them are true, and truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. Ed Wood, just a wacky dude, and Johnny Depp's performance is really good. He sort of is like a ventriloquist dummy come to life. I don't know if Ed Wood actually was like that, but it makes for a hilarious movie, and it's really, really funny. At number 6 is Fargo from 1996. That was directed by Joel Coen. And it's, of course, written by the Coen brothers. And this is just another great cast. Frances McDormand, William H. Macy, Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormare, John Carroll Lynch, who isn't usually in movies like this, but is phenomenal. Just an all-around great story. I liked the accents and the wacky dialogue. You betcha, and all that kind of stuff. I think after I saw this movie for the first time, a lot of the dialect kind of crept into my own way of talking for a little while, which probably annoyed the shit out of most of my friends, but it really kind of sticks with you. And the story is just, it's kind of twisted. The performances are fantastic. Again, just an all-around great movie. And I'm probably repeating myself a lot because, again, I'm thinking of these things off the top of my head. I didn't really prepare a lot for this other than putting the list together, but I'm just trying to think of things, what these movies stick in my brain as. At number 5, we've got the top 5. At number 5, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, is Boogie Nights. Saw this in the theater, didn't really know what to expect. It is, of course, the story of Dirk Diggler, who is a man who is gifted with an extraordinary third arm. And he, that's not really true if you don't know what the movie's about, just look it up. But it's a really kind of an inside look at the porn industry and how it changed from the 70s through the 80s. The transformation of on-film porn to video porn and what it did to some of the older porn directors and actors, and those who could make the transition did, and those who couldn't didn't. It's a very good story, but it's also set in an interesting world, kind of a one that you don't see referenced in films very often. Burt Reynolds gives a great performance, and I don't think he won the Oscar. He was nominated for the Oscar. I can't remember who won over top of him, but he probably should have won. He was very good in this. Mark Wahlberg is in it, Julianne Moore, Don Cheadle, John C. Reilly, Heather Graham, and again, William H. Macy, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Just a great cast, an interesting story, and very funny. Number 4, American Beauty, which was directed by Sam Mendes and features Kevin Spacey, Annette Bening, Thora Birch, Wes Bentley. Wes Bentley, of course, is now in Yellowstone. Kevin Spacey is having some troubles with his career and his life and his ethics, but he gives a great performance in this. I'm not going to cancel him out just because of his personal life. He may be an asshole in personal life, but he did a great job in this movie. American Beauty, just about a guy who just doesn't give a shit anymore, and just makes observations about life. Um, it's, I guess, in a way, this is a movie that hasn't aged very well, especially with PC stuff going on. When I saw it, and since I've seen it, I don't want to say I relate to the main character because that's probably not the way I want to frame myself or my life. But there's just a lot of things in this movie that really are thought provoking and very interesting. There are some detours that the character takes that probably aren't PC, but it's an excellent movie, and I like it. At number 3 is Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which was directed by James Cameron. Of course, stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, Edward Furlong, and Robert Patrick as the T-1000. I guess this is probably my all-time favorite action movie. It made it to number 3 on the top 25 of the 90s. So the top 2 are not action movies, but Terminator 2 just has excellent special effects. Of course, one of the first films to incorporate CGI, and it still holds up today. Just an all-around Terminator probably has, the original Terminator from '84 probably has a more original story. Of course, this sort of apes the same type of story, but this is just a more refined movie. Sort of like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. They're not quite as similar as those two movies are, but Terminator and Terminator 2 tell a very similar story. But I think it's just more refined and just more, it had a bigger budget, which I think definitely benefited the movie quite a bit. But Terminator is a classic by all means. I'm not saying that Terminator 2 is better or overshadows the original by much. It's just a more refined movie. Number 2, this is where I had some trouble deciding which one was going to be number 1 and which one was going to be number 2. Number 1 is not Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, of course, was directed by Quentin Tarantino, stars John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Willis, Uma Thurman. Just an all-time excellent movie. I remember I went to the movies once to see this for like the second time, and I took a date, and she was very upset after we left. She's like, "Why did you take me to see this movie about these dirty people?" So we never went out again. So that was funny. But I don't know. The dirty people won over her. It's a very grimy movie, very interesting. Sort of peek under the facade of what mainstream suburban people would probably be doing with their lives. But it's just an excellent movie. A lot of great dialogue. John Travolta's career was revitalized by this movie, and he's really good in it. He hasn't been anywhere near as good since. But Samuel L. Jackson, of course, probably became a huge star because of this movie and his dialogue. Harvey Keitel is in it. It's super quotable. It's just an amazingly well put together movie. It is by far my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. I don't think he's topped it since. Just a great movie. And number 1, if you're guessing Shawshank Redemption, you'd be correct. Shawshank Redemption is a movie that I can, at any time that it's on TV, I will stop and watch it. Tim Robbins is fantastic in it. Morgan Freeman is great. Who else is in this? William Sadler, Clancy Brown, James Whitmore as Brooks. Yeah, just a great cast. Of course, based on the Stephen King story. It was directed by Frank Darabont, who also wrote the script. May have improved on it. I did not read the original Stephen King story. But it makes for an excellent story, and there's so many facets to it. I just think it's just really watchable and rewatchable. You'll catch things. And, like I said, I may flip-flop on 1 and 2 more than anything else on this list, but today, Shawshank Redemption is my number one. And yeah, so there you go. That is my top 25 of the 1990s. Totally subjective list. If you ask me in 6 months what my top 25 would be, there may be some other entries towards the bottom probably, but I think my top 10 is pretty concrete, at least in terms of the movies, if not where they landed. But if you want to see more lists like this or things like this, let me know. Again, I can't take credit for this idea. This, of course, was from Tim Talks Talkies. And again, visit Kenny's Movie Palace. He's got a relatively new channel, and he deserves some new subscriptions from you. So his link is in the box below. So thanks again for watching, everybody. As always, feel free to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. And if you've made it this far into the video, I really appreciate you watching till the end. Thank you for watching, and take it easy. Bye.